First off, just wanted to say thank you to everybody who was able to make it. Just for you guys who don't know, this is our Stay Moving series. This is actually our fourth one in a row. Essentially, the goal of this is to share collective knowledge and insight for everybody. The mindset as we go through this is to constantly think differently and conduct an open dialogue when we're talking about business trends, creative trends, and digital trends. And then the ultimate goal of this is to keep us all a step ahead in the shifting economy. And then, our goal is to create a community of like-minded individuals to work together to become a step ahead of the shifting economy at the time. And every week we actually bring either a friend, a colleague, or somebody that worked with in the past in this actual capacity. And really excited to bring on one of my best friends here in a moment. Today's agenda, we'll be going over apparel and e-commerce. That's the weekly discussion point. We'll be going through industry stats. We're going to meet Brennan here in a second. Then we'll go through business trends, creative trends, and digital trends. And then at the end, we'll have a recap of ideas and then go through an open Q&A. So just want to say thank you everybody who was able to make it out this Friday. So here's just a couple of top level stats to provide us context and clarity when it comes to fashion and e-commerce. As we know, this global apparel market is projected to grow to 1.5 trillion by 2020. This has been a huge industry that's affected a lot of things creatively and business-wise for years. Specifically, the men's apparel segment amounts to 119 billion in 2020, and constantly every single year it's just been growing. And then the majority of the consumers in this market are between 16 and 34. That's kind of the target demo when it comes to this. So without further ado, excited to welcome one of my best friends, Brennan Eccles. We've been friends for, I don't even know, probably 11 years now. And he's over at Cuts Clothing and one of my favorite brands, to say the least. And so I'll kick it off to you, my man.
Yeah, definitely. Excited to join today, guys. So quick about me, STSU alum with Josh back when we met about 11 years ago. I live in LA, Santa Monica. Cuts is based in Culver City. I come from a digital marketing and media buying background. I've been through a couple agencies before coming over to Cuts. Been working with Cuts since inception, so a total of 4 years, but officially 1 year as director of marketing. So yeah, stoked to be here.
And you might know a thing or two about film photography. Had to sneak that, man. One of the best creatives that I know, to say the least, and I've been very fortunate to kind of learn and grow with him over the years. So yeah, just want to kick off to the business trends. And so the way that we'll kind of roll this is we're seeing some trends on our end. And so the way that we'll do it, I'll kind of feature one of the main trends that we're seeing and then ask a follow-up question for Brennan. And then we'll kind of go back and forth, and that's how we'll recycle this time. So one of the biggest things that we're seeing on our end is truly supply chain disruption, right? Anything from procurement, shipping, manufacturing, packaging, and labeling is obviously something that's been affecting brands, whether on Amazon or if they have their own fulfillment centers as well. So I think the biggest thing that I want to ask you, Brennan, is, do you forecast any challenges in product availability? And can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing on your end in regards to this trend?
Yeah, definitely. For us too, it was pretty scary for a moment, but luckily we timed our product orders accurately, and we kind of missed the time window of when things hit the fan for the most part. So for our sake, we got very lucky. In terms of future issues, there's a lot of things you can do to avoid it. The biggest thing is definitely diversifying your manufacturing. So example for China, if you're solely dedicated there and then COVID or another situation happens, it's going to stifle you for a certain amount of months. Whereas what we're trying to do is find other opportunities for manufacturers. In case that does happen, we'll have other opportunities to fulfill our product orders.
Awesome. Yeah. I think we're seeing that, kind of around the board, and that's, it's awesome to see that you guys are being very proactive about that, because I think especially right now, brands truly need to do that. I think the second thing that we're seeing across the board, right, is this idea of being a lot more agile, right? We're seeing a lot of the bigger companies, from the Louis Vuittons, you name it, really cutting a lot of their workforce, which really just goes to show that it's about business agility. And so can you talk to us a little bit more about, the work from home schedules, maybe your roles and responsibilities in regards to what maybe has shifted on your end?
Yeah, definitely. So being a startup too, we've always been lean, a low overhead. So it was for us, we've always been designed for situations like this. But obviously things changed drastically when it happened. I'm in my office right now, but I maybe come once or twice a week. There's no one in here. It's more for a change of pace. So as soon as everything happened, it was obviously mandated work from home. It became apparent that even though we're used to being in an office and we're used to working from home, the communication just had to level up. So it's over communicating, it's calling, texting, slacking, jumping on Zoom calls, pre-meetings. It's a whole nother level of communication now.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I mean, obviously, with us being on Zoom, I think it's actually a good thing for a lot of us because it's really focusing on our relationships that are at hand. And I love that, since we're not able to necessarily be there, it's challenging us to think creatively about how do we communicate effectively, because a lot of us are very visual, right? And just the way that we interpret information, it's a lot easier when somebody's next to us. So we have to be a lot more clear and intentional with our communication. You guys being a heavy e-commerce brand, right? And kind of from the beginning, and then there's obviously some other brands in town that have a little bit of the juxtaposition of a storefront and an e-commerce. I just want to get your, kind of opinion, right? So we see like the brands like Blenders Eyewear who has it. What do you feel the future is from that standpoint? Are you guys ever looking at getting a storefront, or where are you seeing brands right now with that?
Yeah, I mean, funny enough, right before this was happening, we were interviewing for a wholesale manager. We were walking through pop-up shops and considering like a freestanding store for us. So it was a hot topic for us, but obviously with the current situation, that took a big leap backward. So I think it's still going to be a component in the future, but I mean, this is just eye-opening. If you don't have a strong baseline for direct-to-consumer online, you're going to have to be one moving forward, just because there's so many unforeseen issues that we're seeing today. It's just a very scary time for retail, but I still see it as being a component. You can't beat the fact of going in, especially for apparel like us, of touching and feeling and seeing it for the first time.
Yeah, and I think this last point is something that you guys did by design, and I'm very, happy that I saw you guys do this from the beginning. But as we all know, right, in the 90s and the early 2000s, it was all about the big, bold logos. It was all about like the flashy type of aesthetics, right? And a lot of that stemmed from action sports. A lot of it stemmed from this like modern kind of bold culture. But what we're seeing now, and we have seen, I think, over the last like 5 to 10 years, is a lot less of that, bolder kind of logo in your face and a lot more like minimal, like on your shirt right now. And for those who don't know, right, I think, just to give you guys a little bit of background, right, like they've done a great job aesthetically positioning their brand with the look and feel and whatnot. But as you can tell, even if they do have, their logo predominant, right, it's very minimal, right? And I think that's just a true testament that you guys were really ahead of the curve when it came to this. So I guess, for me, when you're looking at that, like, what were some of the decisions being a little bit more minimal with your guys' design from the get-go?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. That was one of the first things that when Steven created the brand, he wanted to get away from that trend of the action sports, big labels on the front and the back. It was never about that. It was more focusing on the quality of the product and then keying in certain aspects to it. So like the shirt I'm wearing now, this is probably the most branding we'll ever put on a shirt for the most part. And we actually call it the branded collection. So it's more for the diehard loyalists of us, and then internally and for situations like this. But for us, we always wanted the quality to speak for itself, and we designed the shirts just to have, the only logo placement is going to be in the inside collar and then the bottom X on the bottom right. So when people go out and they see a shirt, they can usually tell just by the style of the shirt if it's cuts, and then when they identify on the lower right hand side, it's kind of like the aha moment. Like we don't need to broadcast it out, but people inherently know if they know the brand already.
Yeah. And I think that kind of goes into, our next segue, right? And I don't want to belabor it because, we have been, through this COVID times for the last like month or so. So, we're obviously seeing brands being innovative, thinking differently, right? And kind of hitting the mass, the Shields, right? The Blenders, the Pura Vidas. Really love what they're doing with that regard. And so just for my biggest thing, and I think a lot of people on here, is what do you do when you consider, new different product lines, and what's that process like for you whenever you do have an idea, and how does that work?
Yeah, so sorry, Steven was just coming in. Can you repeat that last part? I'm pretty sure I caught the first though. Apologies.
I just want to know what's your process in regards to, creating new products and getting it out to the marketplace. Like, what's your thought process with that?
Yeah, so for us too, and for people that don't know, we're primarily only men's apparel. T-shirts is the only product line. So starting from there, the approach is go for the low-hanging fruit. And what we've seen a lot is, especially in the basics world, we don't even consider ourselves a basic, but in the basic, apparel world, people jump into it too quickly, where they come out with, maybe they start with shirts or pants, but then they try to increase it too quickly to go to socks or underwear and sweatshirts and hoodies. And when they do that, people get confused and they don't understand what their truly hero product is. So it's like they're not really known for being good at anything specific, but they have like a price sensitive product category. So for us, we're looking at trying to master t-shirts, which I think we're so far from it. There's a lot more of iterations that we're planning, But then in terms of for us, it's like what's going to provide the most value next in line to our current customers. So that would be starting off just with tops. What else can we provide in terms of tops that a shirt can't provide to other people? So a little sneak of it would be polos is going to be a product line that'll be coming out pretty soon, followed by maybe a crew sweatshirt, etc. So for us, it's like we want to dominate the t-shirt category, the tops category, and then eventually be something where it gets to a point where we could consider bottoms. But right now, it's far from it. So we want to be known as the best t-shirt in the business. And then when we go to the next iteration, it's a seamless transition, but then also just hit it home that we'll make the best polo out there and continue to do so.
Yeah, and I think too, to give everybody a little bit more context as well with that, from the beginning, it was about this modern, individual who, worked from home, but also would do activities from home, and then they'd go to the workplace, and then they'd go out for drinks or whatnot afterwards. And I think, for you guys, you truly narrowed in on your target demo, and you're more so looking at like what would they like to have, and working with your target demo versus what I think a lot of brands do is they think they know what their target demo wants, but you guys are very good at actually talking to your customers and knowing, okay, this is the product that I think would work well for them, which is something I've always admired about you guys, because it's less about, hey, let's come out with pants, hey, let's come out with this. And it's more like what's driven the majority of your guys' revenue is the shirts and the basics and the idea of like what they can have next. And so I've always come and as on that. The second part on that regard, right, is just kind of like sales and discounts. We're seeing this everywhere, right? Like if you go to your Gmail, we're just being flooded like 40% off this, 50% off this, right? And I know a lot of it has to do with, they're trying to get rid of their product inventory, and I totally get it, right? Especially the bigger brands. So, for you guys, are you guys providing more sales or discounts, or, what are you guys doing from your end, to kind of help out with that?
Yeah, I mean, the current situation we've had to start the discount in general just applied pure shopping behaviors. But as you know, for us as a premium brand, we've always strayed away from discounting. We'll never compete with the other basics out there that will do packs of shirts for a big discount or always offering those big discounts. That's never been our MO for the most part. But it just goes more in tandem with like the marketing. Once you actually acquire a customer, is then how can you provide more value to them beyond just the product, and really buy them into the brand. We have a couple other things that should be rolling out too that would address like this situation in terms of older products that are sitting in the store and how we can provide that to them, not as like a discount, but in a way that makes sense to them, And I think it goes back into the shopping behavior of our customer. For guys, they're simple, Once they find a shirt and style that fits them, that's all they want. They want to make it easy. So for example, what we do with our lower funnel flows is if we have a certain style that's low out of stock, it's an easy process for us to go out and find those customers that bought previously and just have more of a personalized message directing them to the opportunity of like, these are the last chances for the style. It seems like before, here's your chance.
Awesome. Then I think just the last thing that we're seeing to kind of wrap this up, the last two things per se, and there's not too much of a question with it, so we can move on to the next topic, but we are seeing the millennials shift a lot more towards, durable goods, right? And I think that's just innately because of what's going on. And then also I think a lot of, consumers nowadays are a lot smarter with the products and what they're getting, and they're buying into it. And I know that's something that you guys have truly, focused on. It's the ingredients inside the shirt that truly make it durable, right? And I always say with people, price has to equal value. And I think you guys have done an exceptional job with that, especially knowing that, like, I had multiple cut shirts and they're still lasting, right? When you put them in the laundry and they come out, they'll fit well. And I think that's a testament to the specific ingredients that you guys place within it, which I think is great. And then the last thing, just kind of on this regard, is it's interesting because in a fashion, the high branding, initiatives like the fashion shows, the massive PRs, the launch parties, and experiential events, a lot of times that high fashion sector is really what drives a lot of consumer trends and behaviors, and really gets passed on to, the brands to come out with their lookbooks, whether it's in, their fall line, their summer line and whatnot. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens, that a lot of these are being halted, or are they just going to go virtual, or are they going to be live streamed? So just, more of just a thought to kind of think about, but it's going to be interesting to see that a lot of those trends that tend to be set in London, New York, Miami Swim Week, right, in lieu of the current situation, those are going to be halted. So just some things to kind of think about. So yeah, just kind of going into creative trends, and I'll kick it off over to you, Ben, if you want to take this section, my man.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Awesome, Brennan. Awesome to have you, mate. I think I'm kind of most excited to chat creative with you because, you guys are a brand that are very prominent in social. The website, the social, the email, all these different touch points that you guys have utilizes a bunch of different media from, studio photography, lifestyle photography, video, and all that sort of stuff. So I've got a couple of topics I want to kind of bring up on the creative and really just pull out a couple of things that you guys do really well. First things first, I think just chatting on the photography side, I think what we're seeing with a lot of brands, obviously, we've hopped on this quite a bit. The lifestyle, the outdoor content is really limited at the moment. And brands are starting to shift more towards indoor, home-focused content, stuff that's really relevant to today's consumers. You can see here some of the indoor photography you guys have been able to utilize in the last month or so. And to kind of set some context, can you sort of walk us through, as much as you're willing to share, obviously, the creative process for, photo shoots in general for you guys in terms of, pre-shoot, day of, editing, and all that sort of stuff to get that final set of images for you guys?
Yeah, definitely. And our internal process starts with the content vertical. So it's all based on the product. So when we look at the product and what's coming in, we kind of break it down as a priority of how much investment do we want to do behind it? What do we need to display? So for this line, this looks like actually the spring collection. We map out 3 different categories. So there's studio, which is e-com or psych walls. It's very controlled environment, obviously. It's what you see when you go to the PDPs of all the websites. But we have a pretty refined style that we use it elsewhere. Another category is more of the daily lifestyle, customer lifestyle. So this is what you see here in a loft environment, at home environment. It's a little more approachable for consumers to see this in the light and kind of envision themselves in cuts and being here. The third category is more of the campaign advertising one. So we just did, for example, a photo shoot and video shoot in Joshua Tree, which is more of the wow factor, the brand awareness, the excitement. So going into it, we planned all these out probably 3 months in advance and build a pre-production roadmap to do so. Because as soon as the products come in with the samples, it becomes a game of managing all the models, all the independent contractors to shoot it in a timely manner. But then also start the post-production process so we launch it properly from all aspects, whether it's socially, the website, any ad campaigns, etc. So specifically this one, it pretty much becomes a process of sourcing models. We have a network of content creators and videographers we work with. We have to source all the locations. We get stylists. We have pretty much a pretty rigorous pre-production package that we go through. Obviously, it has a couple calls with the whole group entirely, and then it becomes the day of the shoot. The cuts team is always there an hour earlier, so waiting for the crew to arrive, doing the pre-production of it, and then it's just pretty much a go from there. There's everything from shot lists, a flow of the day that we have our team build out, but it's planned by the minute to pretty much hit every product, every angle that we can, and then from there, as soon as it's done, it goes into a full post-production cycle. And again, that's just internal management with our team, because based on these product orders, you're going to have maybe 3 different campaigns from 3 different shoots where you all have to plan for a certain launch date or a certain application. So it's pretty intricate, going from the pre-production, shooting, and then post-production. That's all pretty much mapped out internally. But for the time being, especially prior to COVID, we were mapping this out probably a quarter in advance.
Wow. And I know you guys, focus a lot on campaign photography, which I think is almost a little bit more story focused. There's probably a little bit of a different process in, how you share that content versus just capturing studio and lifestyle photography. Is it a little bit more work in kind of figuring out how you're going to display and share that content with your audience as opposed to just, everyday studio and lifestyle content?
Yeah, I mean, there goes a lot into it. It's been a learning process for us. What you see right here took 4 years of Steven and I in the beginning trying to figure out the right recipe for us. And it's kind of grown obviously with our brand as well in tandem. But we're always at every photo shoot, we always do an action item for what we can do better. So I think it's always just analyzing the outcome to it, going back to what the pre-production too was from it, and then kind of just more discussing what's that next level we can take it to. It's always constantly improving on every step.
Yeah. And I guess removing this whole COVID situation, what is it like, the cadence of photo shoots for you guys, and how often are you guys, having to go back and renew content?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's a monthly ordeal. We'll have probably 1 to 3 shoots a month, depending on what the budgets are for the bigger campaigns. Maybe have those once a quarter. Studio is definitely once a month. These lifestyle ones, maybe every other month, but it's all based on what's coming in terms of products, which is going to start to exponentially grow this year. So we might even get to a point where we're doing 2 or 3 from our own procured production.
Yeah. And you guys can kind of see these photos here. It looks, you guys do a really good job of kind of talent, model management, and sort of bringing the right look and feel. Obviously, one thing we talk about a lot is keeping a consistent look and making sure that the target audience is really exemplified in the media. Can you tell us a little bit about the inner workings of model management, how you guys go about finding the right people for the job, and what's a good fit for you guys as a fashion brand?
Yeah, definitely. And taking a step back too, I came from more of the strictly media buying, digital marketing, and not so much the production sides of things. So this is something I've learned and picked up pretty quickly in the past year or so. But for us in model casting, it's a process that people I don't think realize how difficult it is, especially for a brand like us, where we have a certain perspective, we have a certain brand image, and it becomes a process of finding models, whether it's through applications like New Book, or I think there's one called Luke, where people can make a social profile. You kind of pick them out and have the discussions between them. We obviously have a lot of relationships with agencies in LA, and that's one of the biggest benefits of being in LA is having all these, having the agents to do castings and to scout and plan before going to it. And then it gets to a point where you almost have a direct relationship with the models. And the best part about my job is obviously we're our own customers. So it's very easy for us to identify what we need to do and how we're going to try to market it. We find some like-minded people that we continue to do the process with. So you can see Dusty here. We've been shooting for probably over 6 to 8 months. And we continue to do so just because he understands us at the brand. He's a fan of the brand, loves our shirts as well. So it becomes pretty natural.
Yeah. And how has kind of the media execution process sort of changed for you guys with everything going on? Like you guys have a lot of photography partners. Are they still able to capture content for you guys, based on the work from home / like indoor type lifestyle we're all getting accustomed to?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a lot of guys that we have on content retainers, it was a seamless execution to transition to more of a work from home style. And then obviously with like our network of other more, I guess, independent contractors, it was another seamless and pretty easy execution to map it out with them, to shoot from home. It obviously changed in terms of how we would brief them in and do so. But that's like one of the beauty of we've always been designed to have that communication like outside of being working from home. So it was pretty seamless to do it. And what was great too, if you see here, we already planned on doing a lot of these shoots. So it was easy for us to repurpose a lot of this work from home content. So we were in a really good position where we weren't solely dedicated on, say, the big campaign levels or only studio level.
Just having a bunch of different content like ready to go. I think that's awesome. Mm-hmm. Just on that note, a couple of these different content types that we're seeing, obviously the indoor work from home type content, media, video and photo and stuff. This is Justin Bieber's brand, I believe, right, Josh? This Drew. They're doing more like at home, but still lifestyle, kind of focused on the outdoors, really outside the home, but still kind of, home based. And then you've got other brands that are kind of looking more towards the future, aspirational, inspirational, that, where do we put ourselves once this is all over? I think we're kind of getting to the point where brands are getting closer to being able to go back to work and start getting back into our normal routine from a few months ago. So brands like Louis Vuitton are doing more like, hey, what are you ready for in future? And what are we kind of getting geared up for? And really inspire people to sort of get ready for that next stage. And then the second thing I would love to chat about, I think, is the video content for you guys. You guys do a ton of video, whether it's in just social, website, or brand videos and paid social and things like that. I'm curious, kind of, how does the approach differ from video versus photography, or do you kind of blend those things together?
Yeah, I mean, so it's one of those things where it seems like it's on the same vein. Obviously, the set is the same, the models are the same, but it's a completely different process of how we storyboard it out. There's obviously overlap when you're shooting it, but when it gets to the post-production, we have a very strict, I guess, template, you would say, especially for ads that you see here, that we follow and execute upon as we get them in. So it's definitely taking advantage of when we do the photo shoots is getting the right video, but the shot lists will differ very. And you can see here on the far right one, this is an example of more of like a POV lens that we use one of our content creators to do so. So there's one thing that for the ones on the left is we have myself, we have our in-house videographer on set, we have a stylist, it's very manicured, and we're able to pump out probably 20 different styles in the same light when we test on ads. Whereas the one on the far right, this was more of an idea that we had just to kind of mix up the content style. It was more so on the content creator to come back to us with a couple versions and iterations. And we kind of filled it into our template that's applied. As you can see here, it's all a similar text overlay.
Yeah, and going back to the topic of using different photographers and videographers and things like that, how do you guys manage that? I guess that difference between on brand and what Cuts clothing represents, and the different style that these different videographers and photographers might have. Is there like a middle ground you have to reach, or do you kind of just let them run with their style?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on where it's going to be displayed. Yeah, because at that point, anything that we're putting on the website or we're putting on our Instagram organically, it's going to be it's going to be a little more strict from a brand perspective. Like, we're very sensitive to it. When it comes to ads, though, it becomes more of a process of let's test it, let's find out. There's going to be a little more leniency because we want the numbers to do the talking. So for a content creator, once we obviously evaluate it and decide, is it going to be a good brand representation for us? Is it going to live on the site and on Instagram organic, or something that's a little more raw and quick that we think will do a better job in terms of a UGC ad, for example? So it basically determines on where we're going to display it. That kind of drives it.
Yeah, and we see a ton of brands doing way more video now, and sort of really engaging the audience. I'm curious, from a high level, what are some of like the key benefits that you see that video can really leverage as opposed to just your standard photography? Because I think they both have really good benefits. But just from your level, from a fashion sense, what are some of those key takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, it's the time for a brand. It lets the brand flex a little bit more and tell a story. It's going to be a little more captivating. Obviously, like with my photography background, the photography always will have that strong impact on somebody. But nowadays with videos and the ability to pump out content at such an affordable rate, it's definitely leveraged the opportunities to open. And you'll see it across everywhere now in terms of engagements. It's just something that's become the norm with our society and with content consumption. I mean, you even look at like TikTok, for example. 90% of it, 99% is all video. You might splice in a couple of photos, but everything is based on video, just because from the pure engagement people get out of it.
Yeah, and I think what's great on that note, really lastly, just with the video content, is you guys have a good mix of like long form video to really give people a little bit more of an in-depth look at the brand. It's a bit more of an experience, utilizing different video and audio assets as well. But you've also got like that short form, just like, hey, here's a quick reminder of this is Cuts, this is who we are, this is what we do, and kind of push across some of the benefits of the brand. So, credit to you guys. You've done a really good job with the video aspect and really utilizing that component to be a lot more engaging than just, your standard studio and lifestyle photography on repeat. So huge props. And then lastly, I think on the creative side, we're seeing a lot more brands doing partnerships with collaborators, creators, and stuff like that. That's not really different for you guys. You guys have done a ton of partnerships and collaborations with brands, creators, photographers, videographers. I guess just from a high level, how important is that to growing the brand and sort of building a brand around the same lifestyle that you want to push? Yeah, I mean, it's a huge component. The difficult part is finding people that are in the same trajectory with you, especially for us, it's always a process of finding who's going to fit us, who are some people that we could actually be friends with, or what some products that we actually would use or we enjoy. So it's definitely a component. It's just doing the right recipe for success. Awesome, mate. Thank you. Nick, I'm going to pass it off to you, brother.
Great. Thanks, Ben. I'm going to kick it off with the digital trends here. First of all, researching this, I found a lot of brands, we're all seeing this, are personalizing all things communication, content, products, to really create that true customer relationship. We're especially seeing this, this is being key on the e-commerce side. I saw a stat that says 80% of consumers say they are more likely to do business with a company if it offers personalized experiences. You guys really crush it on this end, showing the unique product descriptions, the details and individual products from a personal experience, other related products that I might want to buy. How important is personalization for Cuts customer experience? I mean, I can say it's one of the number one priorities because it's the basis of Cuts. When Steven started the company, it came from the personalization of the t-shirt. So offering the 3 different collars, offering the 3 different bottom cuts, you essentially get a customized shirt to what you want. So that's just from the product standpoint. I mean, that's just the core basis of Cuts right there. As we've developed over the years and refined our tactics, it becomes even more important of identifying what people want, when they want it, and how they want it. And beyond even just the product too, we always try to strive to find ways to provide value beyond the product. So even like we have a tactic coming up pretty soon here for Mother's Day. We use SMS marketing has been a huge channel for us. But for like Mother's Day, we're not even going to be pushing any product. We're literally just sending out a text message in the morning, just reminding people it's Mother's Day and to call your mom. So it's like going into the aspect of like, if I'm taking myself
if I'm a customer of Cuts and I get that text message and it's going to resonate with me, provide me value of, okay, that does make sense. I do have to call my mom. You're adding that extra touch that even goes beyond just a product, and you're providing that value of a brand that usually you don't see nowadays.
Wow, that's a great point. I'm going to need that text to hit up my mom on Mother's Day. Sure to send that.
You'd be surprised. A lot of people forget.
The next trend, we're all seeing higher digital consumption from users and more cautious spending. We're all at home streaming everything, reading everything, digesting all things. And I'm curious on your end if these trends have translated, to higher website consumption, higher engagement, higher ad click-throughs. What are the trends that you're seeing on your social and the website?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of opportunities. That's, I guess, it's almost like analytics. It's back by analytics. So a big one for us is sizing, and we're in conversations with a couple technology companies that pretty much one of our biggest issues is the sizing with being a direct consumer brand online. So what I mean by there is you can see just based on people's reviews and fittings, it goes back into the back end of providing what the true size is for people. So it's all stemming from, I guess, analytics is what we're trying to find that right recipe. For AR, for example, that's huge. I think definitely for someone more like, say, glasses, for example. Obviously, size is a huge issue for them, but how it looks on somebody could be super impactful when you want to do AR. And the thing is, there's so many that are coming out. It's finding which ones work for you.
Yeah, that's a great point. And going into the AR conversation, I'm a tech guy. I'm here in Palo Alto. I love startups and techs and in the fashion world, I've seen this become a trend or over these last 5 years, being the 3D visualization experiences, augmented reality, people being able to see the products on them, people being able to use the products and have an app that's connected to the product. From a Cuts just perspective on new technology that is growing, how do you guys approach it? Do you approach it the same way you approach building product verticals on a social landscape? Is it something you even want to touch? Where's your perspective with all of this?
Yeah, I mean, we're at a point right now where it's definitely in consideration. It's something we haven't pulled the trigger, just because for us too, I think it's a little different for a lot of brands. For, like I said, for VR, like eventually it could be a component when we do more styles beyond just t-shirts and hoodies. But it's always a topic of demand for sure.
And then lastly, we're seeing a lot of fashion luxury brands heavily focused on social to improve the content, the community, like you were saying before. And Jill actually popped in and asked a great question. What have you seen in your social media ads now and compared to before COVID?
Yeah, I mean, so that's a very interesting one. Like from what we've seen is CPMs are cheaper than ever because it's not translating to conversions as much. The engagement is high with a lot of them. We've seen a great response when we did about like a 30-day window with a nonprofit called Direct Relief, where we did a 5% donation to their COVID relief fund. So that was like a positive sentiment that we saw. It wasn't like it helped from an engagement standpoint, but right now it's just such a fickle media spend right now. So it's tough to see. And it's one of those moments we've never gone through a process like this. So you're taking it day by day.
And you mentioned you've been with Cuts for the last 4 years since its inception. And you guys obviously now like 148 followers on Instagram. What have been the key factors over time for growth? I'm sure all the things in a great product, all of these things matter when it comes to building a company. But have there been some key factors that you guys can attribute to the growth?
Yeah, I mean, so when we look at the Instagram feed for us, it's honestly probably the first interaction people have with us as a brand. So it's one of the most number one priorities, obviously, besides the website. So everything is manicured to the highest degree from the get-go. Steven has been managing it for back in the day since inception until actually this past last December when we hired a full-time community manager, Hannah, who actually has probably taken it to another level and increased it so much more. But it's such a funnel and hub for us that you have so many people in there providing the content, looking it over. It's just been something that you have to put to the highest degree, especially for a brand like us. You just can't take it lightly. But in terms of like, I guess one of the key factors that helped us grow from day one is just the personal touch to it. I couldn't tell you how many times, even from the very beginning, when people would even just like one photo, we get maybe 15 likes. This is 4 years ago. Steven and I and Sean and a couple of the original founders, we would go to every person that liked our photo, comment back to them, DM them, thank them. we didn't even know if they bought our product or not, but just having that extra level of communication to kind of get people to buy it early on, I think really set us apart from the beginning, that we try to do so moving forward.
I love it. Just building that brand equity and that foundation with your customer base. Josh, I'll pass it off to you.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, man. So yeah, just as a quick little recap, I think, and then we'll open it up. I know we just have 10 minutes left, but I think, the biggest things, taken away from this is just forecasting, preparing for supply chain challenges. One of the key things that you said was the diversity of manufacturers, the diversity of your key strategic partners. So just having that, in your back pocket is something good. When something does happen in the future, just starting to think a little bit more of the conscious humanity of things. And I think we're starting to see a lot of brands starting to pivot that way anyways. When we're creating content, whether it's, from a diverse standpoint and whatnot, just looking at different ways to do indoor and work from home content execution. I know last week we talked about FaceTime photography as a huge growing trend, since photographers can't be there or they have to be 6 feet away. And then one of the last things was just a higher consumption of video content, and looking at how can you parse user-generated content, and how can you take that, pair it with, the production value that you guys have already set to create a multitude of different ads, to see which ones kind of perform the best, A/B testing and whatnot. And then also looking at how can you be aligned with other partners and collaborations, as in brands, creators, and being very sensitive to that. Because at the end of the day, this is your brand, this is your DNA. You want to be very consistent from a look and feel, and you want to find the right target demographic. So thank you, man. I really appreciate it. I learned a ton from you, to say the least. And so I just want to, if anybody has any questions for Brennan, just want to leave the last 10 minutes for this, to kind of open it up. These are just some original ideas, what are other ideas, what are challenges we're seeing and whatnot. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to pop in.
I might actually jump in here again. I'm sorry I'm taking away this entire show. But back on the digital side, I think when Jill was asking about the paid social, the paid advertising, I think what's really interesting is, obviously people are at home more. They're consuming digital content more with, more time at home, on their phones and stuff. But the kind of juxtaposition with that is, knowing that the current economy and how things are working, there's obviously less disposable income. People are a little bit more wary of, what they should be spending money on. So from a paid advertising perspective, you said that ads are getting more, are less expensive at the moment, which from the way I see it, I think obviously more engagement, probably more clicks through the website, more website traffic. But conversely, you're probably going to see less conversions of those types of customers. Is that kind of similar to what you guys are seeing?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. Is it's not translating to that final conversion, and we're in a lot better place than a lot of other people. So in terms of ad spend levels, it can it's shifting. It's day by day, but we're still doing well enough that we can continue to grow it. Whereas a lot of other brands, and maybe even more of a luxury than just us, yes, they can exactly buy those cheap CPMs. They can probably get that click to the site, but ultimately they're not going to buy something that's a couple $100s for the most part. So I think it's definitely based on the product and the industry you're in. But right now, there's even other brands that are fully capitalizing on the cheaper inventory that might be more of an impulse purchase, where it's pretty much an open season for them.
Yeah, and potentially it might be a better play for brands to focus a little bit more on the brand awareness side of things and just get the brand in front of consumers instead of really focusing on that last conversion or getting people to actually buy.
Yeah, definitely. And again, this is something that no one has ever gone through before, especially with media how it is today. To have a crisis happen and then having such new media at every point, it's been something that we've been handling well with our team, but no one has any experience to this degree. So it's definitely a wild west right now.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, Kellen, you have a good question in here, pretty much asking, how are you shifting your content creation and photo shoot planning to get new advertising content? When at a time right now, it's hard to shoot in person.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's why we have such a strong network of content creators where they can go off on their own and produce content. In terms of the photo shoots that we have upcoming, things have definitely been pushed back. And then also from the bigger production levels, you just have to be way more there's a higher degree of procedure to do it, especially being in LA. I had somebody share me, I think it was Sony's productions, what their list of new techniques when they go on the photo shoots. So it's pretty much a much leaner crew. You have to have masks, you have to do the social distancing, have to have hand sanitizer on set, have to have individually wrapped crafty, which is the lunches. So there's there's a new shift. If you are going to go shoot, you have to execute it properly. And a lot of things too, a lot of other businesses studios, they're still closed for the time being. So you can still go out and run and gun in certain instances, but if you want to go shoot at a certain set, it's more of an agreement with the owner rather than just an open, guess, facility.
Yeah, awesome question. I know we have 5 minutes left. Does anybody else have a question for Brennan? Let's see. A couple minutes.
And I guess to add on to that, Kellen, like in a lot of photographers in my network, they're reaching out to brands and willing to shoot indoors, especially from like the product standpoint. T-shirts is pretty difficult when we go and shoot, just because we actually have a product stylist. It's much harder to fold a shirt and integrate it more than you think. There's a lot of tissue paper and pinning that you don't see. But from like a standpoint of like a drink, you can get pretty creative with that and shoot in your own house and set it up. I've seen a lot of guys get really creative and work with macro lenses and work in their garage and come out with amazing stuff. So depending on what the product is, there's people that are willing to make it happen in their own home.
Yeah, and I think too, just to kind of butt in there, it's interesting to see the creativity and the flexibility that some of these creators are doing in-house, right? It's almost like, when you do have something that's a little bit more product-based, it's a lot easier because you don't have to depend on somebody else. And so you can really use it as a way to kind of creatively show it, just like, the June Shine, or like other brands are maybe like spinning or warping stuff, which is pretty cool. And I love seeing that. Andrew has a good question. On this point, how would you recommend content creators going about reaching out to brands to offer services for them and still being able to find clients in these times?
Yeah, I think this goes to the fact of not a whole lot has changed in terms of that. Like if I personally was a content creator or photographer, and I was reaching out to a brand, rather than just like a cold call and say, hey, let's work together, come to them with value already. Like build a presentation, a deck that's already saying, this is what I can do, this is what I want to do for you, and maybe even go and shoot some stuff of the product before you even get to that point. I've seen a lot of that work with guys I've worked with over the past, that just because they love producing content or love the brand already, they'll go do it for free to entice and start that conversation. So I think it's just finding the time to initiate yourself, to really kind of think through the process before you even get there. Because a lot of people, and especially from my end too, I get probably 10 to 20 sales emails a day, and if there's not like an eye-catching, I guess, proposal, or can't see the extra level of commitment, then I don't even waste my time on it, because it's something known in the industry, especially when it comes to content, where you have to kind of go above and beyond because there's so many people in the industry.
Yeah, and I think that's a cool question too. In regards, is I think that's something that we've always valued, is using a high level degree of creativity to make yourself stand out, right? And I think more now than ever, it's imperative. And I think on that regard, when people are reaching out to you, Brennan, what are some of the things that you look out for? I mean, obviously photography, like high quality, but is there anything in the messaging, or is there anything in particular that you're seeing from a DM or an email, or everyone's like a little bit more effective?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say one, and we're starting to see it more often, but for us, it's the best thing you can start an email when someone's coming to you with an idea or just pitching anything is truly being authentic and saying you're a fan of the brand. Like I've had guys that have pretty much they bought back in the Kickstarter days, or they've been following me or following our profile since we did the Como collaboration. So having like that true authenticity, with the brand beforehand is probably the best thing a marketing manager like myself can hear.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's we're all inundated with a lot of messages. I mean, myself, I get a ton of phone calls a day. Somebody trying to sell me on something, and it's pretty funny because they'll call and they'll instantly go into their pitch, like, hey, I'm so-and-so, and this is what I'm doing, blah, blah. And it's like, whoa, let's dance a little bit. Let's get to know each other, right? And I think it kind of goes back to anything with human interaction and whatnot. And I know for me, if somebody takes the time to go above and beyond and showcase the work that they can do, that's going to showcase their drive and dedication, right? And so from your point of view, if you see somebody create content or do something that's above the norm, right, it's going to catch your eye and you're going to be like, wow, I really like that. And then you'll initiate that conversation. And I just feel like a lot of people don't take that extra step, and they just assume that, hey, me reaching out, that's enough, right? And I think that's back to the pillar of your brand. Yeah,
and then kind of just like going on that, it's to Andrew here, like in a perfect situation, say you're pitching me for some content, you'd start off by even just showing me some photos that you already shot with cuts. Like, here's some stuff already shot for you guys, huge fan of the brand. What else can we do to work together? That's just going to resonate a lot stronger than somebody saying, hey, I'm a good photographer, let's shoot together. Like, okay, that's great. I know a lot of photographers are great, but let's see what you got. So like, if I were you, that's just the extra level of showing your skills and your appreciation to the brand is going to go that much further.
I'll just ask a quick question instead of typing it in. How much do you think brands are actually thinking about content creation right now versus running the business? Because I've been wanting to reach out to some brands, but like, you know, I just asked the question, but it's like, should I, like, how, you know, because I know everything's so sensitive right now. You know, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I'll leave it at this. I mean, brands are still going to have to sell their product to get by unless they have a huge financial backing. So they still need to produce content. Their budgets are probably a lot thinner. So it's case by case, you know. Well, we maybe talk about June Chime for a second. Like they're still selling. They're still doing like I think a delivery service, you know, they did like some POV stuff. So it's looking at what they're doing right now and then how you can, I guess, bring some additional services to them that make sense. You know, it's like, you're not going to try to pitch someone like a huge campaign and like the outdoors, like a national park, for example, because they're all closed. But looking at, okay, what their current situation is, how can I complement them and help? Because it's still going to be a necessary component of their business. It's just finding it in the right procedure.
Yeah, and I think, you know, on that regard too, we talked about it a couple of times, but, and Andrew, I know you're really good at this too, but it's like, how do we look at some of the existing pieces of content that a brand already has? And then how do you creatively tell a story with that, right? So I think the more thrifty you can be, the more you can, let's just call it, quote unquote, put out their fires in their life and add value, I think is now the time to do so, because this is a great opportunity, I think, for a lot of people to really step up and become a preferred vendor. Because if you think about it, you know, they're dealing with ops stuff. Like a lot of people, you know, either they've had decrease in salaries or they've even had, you know, they've had to cut vendors. Well, what does that do? That puts a huge strain on resources. And so knowing that brands are, you know, limited at the moment, the more you could come in and almost be a little bit more of a hero, I think the more you'll be set up for success. So I think, Andrew, on that vein, right, like Brennan was saying, we still need content. We still need to sell. We need to be in business. So how can you look at it, things a little bit of a different lens instead of being like, oh, I'm a photographer. Oh, I'm a videographer. And maybe looking on their Instagram channel, their tags, and being like, okay, they have had X amount of brands that are tagging them already. Maybe I screenshot some of those assets. Maybe I put together a little bit of a story and bring in, you know, a slider or some type of carousel and use that as a way to repurpose content. And then once you create that slider, that piece of content, you send that over to Brennan or, you know, Cuts and whatnot. And I'm like, wow, this person was very resourceful. So those are just like a couple ideas that kind of come to my mind as ways to kind of stand out, given that it's kind of hard to shoot, obviously.
Yeah, and I think even starting the conversation with somebody, you know, like, I know these are tough times, but I would love to start like a conversation of what we can plan to do something in the near future. Because that's like the other mentality is people are trying to stay positive, and when things do turn around, it's just going to be like a turn and burn for the most part. So I think like if you're sensitive to the situation and present it to them in the right way, and even say if it's something you start planning now to execute later on, they're still looking for those outlets. Because like Josh said, a lot of the resources are cut currently, but they're going to have to get it going pretty soon again.
Cool. Well, we are 5 minutes past and we could talk all day. So thank you, Brennan. Does anybody have any final questions before we depart? All right, T. Well, Brennan, my man, thank you so much. I very much appreciate you just taking the time. You know, you've been something that I've always been a really good buddy with, and then also I've looked up to. So really appreciate all this insight. As a follow-up for everybody, what we are doing now is we're recording these and we're going to start placing them on YouTube. So you can take a look at them at a later date as well. And if you guys have any further questions or have any insight or any ways to improve this, please let us know. We're always looking to essentially make this better and have the most value. So hope you guys have an awesome Friday, and just want to say thank you to each and every one of you for taking an hour out of your time to be with us today. So.